If you delve deep into Dark Souls, and by that I mean read item descriptions, not skipping the intro and being very aware of your surroundings, you might just find something interesting. A story. Now here in Dark Souls, you're gonna have to make some inferences and some guesses, but the game has been out long enough that things seem to have settled down, and a consensus about its lore has finally seemed to come. And a lot of this lore reveals interesting things about many of the characters and bosses in the game. So here, I'm going to tell you my 5 favorite Dark Souls characters based upon the quality of their lore that I believe to be true. So knowing that there's going to be spoilers throughout, please, come here and sit by the bonfire and let's journey into Lordran and meet its most interesting figures. Make no doubts about it, Lautrec of Carim is kind of a pain. You rescue him, and how does he repay you? By murdering the firekeeper of the most used bonfire in the game. I mean, come on. But underneath, there's a lot of inferences you can make about the guy that are pretty interesting. Knight Lautrec of Carim, also known as Lautrec the Embraced or Lautrec the Guilty, seems to have a special relationship with the goddess Fina, who is never mentioned outside of items relating to him. He wears the favor set, which seems to feature 2 arms hugging him, or rather, embracing him. This can be implied as the love Fina has for him, which he believes to be real. He also wears the Ring of Favor and Protection, which due to its magical powers also makes you believe that Fina loves him, but here's one interesting thing about this ring. If you take it off, it breaks. But what does that mean? Lautrec is also clearly on some sort of quest that we never really find out about. It seems to drive his every move. For instance, he'll beg of you to help him when he's locked up at the Undead Parish, but if you never meet him there, then back at Firelink Shrine he'll only tell you his name and then whisk you away. He still helps you though if you saved him by being summoned during the Bell Gargoyle and Gaping Dragon fights. With motivations unclear, his stance to you unclear, and a strong relationship with the god mentioned nowhere else, Lautrec certainly strikes me as an interesting character, enough so to get this spot. Anor Londo was once a magnificent castle lived in by gods and giants alike. But now only a few giants remain, along with only one god remaining, Guinevere, the Princess of Sunlight. Or is this true? Attacking Guinevere reveals that she is but an illusion, and that the true final god in Anor Londo's halls is Dark Sun Gwyndolin. Gwyndolin may only be accessed by finding the Dark Moon Sentence Ring in the catacombs and traveling to the bottom part of Anor Londo. Here you may join the Blades of the Dark Moon Covenant and track down those Gwyndolin calls sinners and kill them. Gwyndolin is an illusionist and not much of a fighter. He created the illusions of Guinevere, the sun in Anor Londo, and apparently the giants and demons there too, likely all to impress the cursed undead into thinking the god's power still reigns supreme in Anor Londo, in contrast to the reality that the sun of Anor Londo has long since been put out. Another odd aspect of Gwyndolin is that this god is a male, even though his appearance, physical characteristics, and even voice would make you think otherwise.
Hear the voice of myself, Gwyndolin, and kneel before me.
According to the description of his moonlight robe, his affinity with the moon made Lord Gwyn raise him as a girl for whatever reason, and for some reason this didn't make him angry. Instead, Gwyndolin guards the tomb of Lord Gwyn himself. He's not quite good at it though. Honestly, the boss fight with him is the 4th easiest in the game, behind only the Asylum Demon, the Taurus Demon, and Pinwheel. He has very low health, and the defense stats of his armor support this, but he's great with magic, and this is represented by his personal miracle, the Dark Moon Blade, which is the strongest enchantment in the game. Lastly, I'd like to finish by noting that, since he controls the Way of White Covenant by using the illusion of Guinevere, he technically controls 2 covenants, and combined they seek out to kindle bonfires in support of the gods, and fight his enemies for him, signaling that even though he's a terrible fighter, he definitely has a godlike grip on Lordran. So in the beginning of the Age of Fire, there were 4 Lord Souls discovered, 3 of which went to Gwyn, Nito, and the Witch of Izalith respectively, and together they defeated the Everlasting Dragons. But the 4th went to someone else, someone not as well remembered. The Furtive Pygmy, the first human, obtained the Dark Soul, and humanity itself are but tiny pieces of this soul. But the Furtive Pygmy did not act like the other 3. He instead decided to wait for when the Age of Fire would inevitably die out to bring out his own Age of Dark, where he and humanity would rule the land. But eventually the furtive pygmy was buried and forgotten, but many, many years later his burial site was discovered by the sorcerers of Ulasil, who had been told by a primeval serpent that powerful magic could be uncovered by exploiting and feeding off of humanity. They took this as a sign to torture humans until the magic was uncovered, and the furtive pygmy, also known as the primeval man, was one of them. The torture was terrible beyond the imagination, but the pygmy was able to hang on thanks to a pendant whose warm memories of the past kept him sane. Figuring this out, the sorcerers broke the pendant and the furtive pygmy became mad, and the power of the Dark Soul ran wild. The furtive pygmy then became known as Manus, Father of the Abyss. At least that's how I think it went. Manus is a large being made up of what appears to be pure darkness and odd mutations such as his large hands. He's also emotionally unstable, being prone to go completely berserk, and his emotional attachment to the broken pendant is so strong that he reached into the future to grab you and take you back to Ulasil. Oh, and here's another fun fact about him. According to Koth, you are a direct descendant of this guy. Overall, I think he's cool for the inferences you make about him, so to someone else, I can imagine he's nothing more than an angry black blob. One last thing though. Note how Manus' broken pendant gave him warm thoughts to comfort him and keep him sane? Doesn't that sound a bit familiar? If you thought I was going a bit far in the last one, then you'll love this. So, Lord Gwyn of Sunlight had 3 children. The Princess of Sunlight, Guinevere, Darkmoon Gwyndolin, and his firstborn son, the Old God of War, whose name has been lost to history. Here's what we know. From the description of the Sunlight Blade, we know that he was stripped of his deific status, but why? From the description of the Ring of the Sun's firstborn, we are told that the reason for this was because he lost the Annals, which contain presumably a description of Lordran's history. Finally, the Sunlight Medal tells us that the Old God of War still watches closely over his warriors. So who are we looking for? We're looking for someone who doesn't seem to be a deity, who has some relation to the sun, presumably would use miracles, and would help others in combat. There's also the Sunlight Altar in the Undead Parish that is related to the Sunlight Medal and the Great Lightning Spear, and this is where you may join the Warrior of Sunlight Covenant. Well, only a bridge away is a man that seems to fit right in with this description. Across the bridge from the Sunlight Altar is Solaire of Astora, a member of the Warrior of Sunlight Covenant. No one really helps you out as much as Solaire does in a very literal sense. Solaire can be summoned for more boss battles than any other NPC, and he's the one that gives you the white soapstone so you may help others out. Solaire's also on his own quest, a quest to find his own son. Solaire is searching for a purpose in life, and through this he wants to become as great as the sun. A warm object that comforts many in Lordran when visible is also very much tied to Gwyn and his firstborn son. Remember, the Sunlight Medal says that the Old God of War still watches closely over his warriors. Perhaps the fact that Solaire helps us like no other is what clues us in on him being the firstborn son. Or perhaps it's this statue. This statue of a woman with a baby is across the bridge from Solaire and pretty much is the Sunlight Altar. It appears that the woman is handing the baby a sword, and the sword in question appears to be the Sunlight Straightsword. Now, who has the Sunlight Straightsword? Well, it's Solaire's weapon of choice. The description of the sword mentions how it's a high-quality sword, but it's unlikely to live up to its name. Perhaps when Solaire lost his deific status, his weapon did as well. But eventually Solaire will go mad and try to kill you, which is a bitter end to his story, or perhaps you may even save him, but his depression hints that he may go hollow soon. Solaire is everyone's fan favorite, and I find the prospect of him also being a fallen deity to be very interesting. He may not have reached his dreams, but he made it on this list. Do you know what Lordran needed more than anything else? Lordran needed a hero. As the Age of Fire began to crumble, Lordran really needed someone to stop the advance of the Abyss and its corrupting influence. One tried, and his name was Sir Artorias the Abysswalker. Originally, Artorias hunted the Dark Wraiths and did so with a special ring, the Covenant of Artorias. He also had a partner named the Great Grey Wolf Sif, and it's possible he cared very much for Sif, enough to sacrifice his own life for him. Eventually, Artorias was called to Ulasil to deal with the spread of Manus' abyss and save Princess Dusk. He brought with him the cleansing Great Shield and the silver pendant to help deal with the corrupting effects of the abyss. But through some cruel twist of fate, he lost the silver pendant, and he willingly gave up his shield to protect Sif from the abyss. He also had his left arm broken, and in this state he lost the fight to Manus and was corrupted by the abyss, losing control of his own body. Through some unknown amount of time, he made it to an arena next to Ulasil, and there he met his final foe, the Chosen Undead. Even corrupted and with an arm broken, Artorias was still a tough opponent, but he was slain here. This undead would carry on his legacy and then defeat Manus and stop the spread of the abyss. Many years later, Artorias has become a well-known legend, and his grave is protected by the forest hunters and personally by his old companion Sif. You'd presume that those here don't know about how Artorias failed to defeat Manus for them to have made such great defenses of his grave, but here's the thing, they do know. Alvina knows, for she was present in some sense at the events of Ulasil, and Sif knows, for you fight Manus with him. But perhaps the true measure of a hero is not having the greatest accomplishment, but rather being a good person who gave themselves for someone else. And that's what Artorias did. Perhaps instead of giving the shield to Sif, he could have defeated Manus, as blocking the corruption of the abyss is what that shield was used for. Maybe the same could have been said for the silver pendant. But beating Manus really isn't that important for his legacy. His will and apparent good nature among the world of depression and evil are what made him special. And in the end, he does help you out. Without the Covenant of Artorias, it would have been impossible for the Chosen Undead to have made it to the kiln of the First Flame, so even after death, Artorias is helping people along. It's sad what happened to him, but without a doubt he's my favorite character in Dark Souls. Oh, and his boss battle is also really good, and we might get to that some other time. So this is the end slate. On the left is the previous video in my 5x5 series, and on the right will be and/or is the next one in the series. In the middle there's a link to my channel, and below that is the playlist for the series. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you've got anything to say about it, like telling me how many facts I got wrong, you can go ahead and do so in the comments below. Thanks for watching.